Hi, welcome. So in this video, we are going to start creating a database. So you're going to learn commands like create, insert values, and maybe drop like databases. So even though as a data analyst, you mostly be using the DQL, which is the data query language, mostly consisting of the select commands, you will still be able to learn how to create databases like creating or tables and then inserting values, because there are times you might need to create databases. But most of the time in let's say working in a large company, you might just have just the authorization to read only, just to use your select commands to query and get information from the raw data, but not necessarily to create new databases, which that might be the role of the data engineer or the database architects or database admin. So let's just go straight to the computer, and then I'll show you how to create databases and tables and data, which is what we are going to use to do the analysis in subsequent videos. So here I have my workbench open. So remember, you just have to watch the previous video and see how to install Workbench. Then you log in and you're right here. Now we have this staff database. So the first thing we'll learn is how to drop. So we're just going to see how to drop a table or a database. So if I right click here and I go here, I click on this drop. So it is saying, please confirm permanent deletion of the schema, staff database, and all its data. So it is like this drop helps me now to be able to drop this database, but we don't want to be always clicking like this manually. So we want to have a command where we can share even a script with somebody and the person easily deletes a database without needing to right click like this. So we are going to use this command, the drop. So drop, and then we need to specify database. Remember, we want the commands to be in capital letters most of the time. So drop database, and then you give the name of the database as it is. So we are going to, if you see here, we already have the staff database proposed here by Workbench, which is very interesting. So we're going to click there. That's what we want. And then there are no errors, there are no warnings here. So it shows that if you run this with this command here, run it, then we have the database has been dropped here. So here it shows that the database has been dropped. And then now we can say, okay, if you come now, you want to create a database. So if remember, you have to end the command with the semicolon. So let's go now to create a database. So to create, just like the word is create, then you are going to specify a database, and then now you are going to give the name of the database, because when you click here it says statement is incomplete, expecting an identifier. So the command is okay, but it needs to know what's the name of the database. So you're going to say, okay, let's just say staff, small letter staff underscore db. Then we run this. So but when we run this, we get an error. We get this error because it's saying it can't drop a database because staff database doesn't exist. So now it is this database had already been dropped before. So SQL will always want to run the commands in that order. So there are two ways of doing it. Either you're going to write maybe an if condition, like if exists, which we are going to see, or for now the simple thing to do is just to comment out this. So you can just click to comment out. You can just click on control and / to comment out like that, or you can simply click on hash here to comment out. So when you run this now, you get the one row affected, so it has created the database. So if we want to see that, we can just right click here, refresh all, and then we have the staff DB has been created successfully. So this makes you create a database. Now, another thing you might have an issue with when you're just beginning and you're trying to create maybe tables is that now, if for example I go to create a table, so I'm going to go to create command again. So it's very simple, create. Now I say I want to create a table, and then now I'm going to give the name of the table. So let me just say we are creating a table called staff. And then now the first thing is, since I don't have this semicolon, I get this here. So it says it's not valid at this position, EOF. So if I click here, now I have the create table, and then I close that with the semicolon, and then I run it. So it says can't create database staff again because this one is not commented out. So if we comment it out, I'll just go to command Z. If we comment it out and run it, we say the no database selected. Select the default database to be used by double clicking. So that is one thing now, because we don't have any database selected here, so it doesn't know where to put this staff table in. So you need to now learn this command, which is the use command. Use. So this use now will say use maybe this database. So we are going to say use the staff underscore db, put our close it here. So what we are saying is, if I run this command, if you watch here, it's going to highlight the database that point to the database that SQL Workbench will be focusing on to create the table. So let me run it, just that command. So you see here we have this now has been highlighted, and it's even open for you to be able to do anything now in this database. So if I run now just this command, because remember, if I run this, both it still says use. So if I run it, it says a table must have at least one visible column. So now the error is no longer on the staff, the table, which database are we using, no database selected, but now it is now on the table must have at least one visible column. So now let's add the column, at least, because a table can't be empty. So you need to be able to add a column to the table, so that you can be able to have a table with at least even just a column name. So that's why we are going to say create staff demographic. Then we add open brackets here, go down. Then we can call this maybe a staff ID. Then we have to specify in SQL the because it's saying it's expecting either binary, blob, boolean. So we have to specify the data type. There are so many data types in SQL, but we are going to focus mostly on the integers and characters, voucher. So here in this case, we expect the staff ID to be numbers. So we are going to set this to be a number, and in SQL we are going to give it an integer characteristic. Then we close the brackets here. So I want to close this. So if you want, you can just do the staff and then you run like this. So you have your create table, and then get the staff integer, staff ID, and it is an integer. So you need to specify the type of data here. So let's run this, and then everything is okay here. So if we go now to refresh again here, refresh, then we click on this, you see we have the staff, and if we click on the columns here, we have a staff ID column, and it is an integer, so it's ready to receive numbers. So you can't put text here, it's numbers. So now let us just put in a value. So remember, if you do create table again, you've already created a table, you're going to get an error. So you can select maybe all of these and then you press Control forward slash, or if I go back to command set, I go back, or if you prefer, you comment out like this, like we saw in the previous video. Star, everything out here is commented out. Then on the next line you do star forward, and then now you can now write your next line here. So you want to insert values, so you're going to use the insert command. So let's do insert into. Now you specify the name of the table, staff. Then you say values. Now we have to give at least one value for that table, so we can just say 1001 for example, and then we close it, and then maybe we close the semicolon for example. So let's run this. So one row affected. So if we go here to the staff ID for example, and then let's just refresh it, go to the staff ID, and then we right click and then we click here. So you see we have a staff ID column with a 101 as the value that has been entered here. So you go back here, this query, you see that you are now able to understand how to drop the database, create the database, and then you can also create the table with the create command. Now inserting values into the database, and then you're able now to like right click here like we saw here, and then you have this data, have this here, the data is here. So now let's go ahead now and create the data that we need. So I'm just going to click here, and then I have a script here. So the first thing is we'll need to drop the database. So here, so we need to drop the database if it exists. So if you run this, it's going to drop this database, and if the database is not there, it's not going to throw an error and stop the code. So if I run this, so it drops the staff database. If I run it again, it just tells me warning. So it's not like cross in red. It says can't drop database staff DB, database doesn't exist. So fine, so we can now create the database. So I'm just going to create database, then we are going to call it now staff. Same thing, let's call DB. Then now if we know that okay, the database has been created, so if you run this, it creates the database. We run it again, we have no issue because we've made it robust to be able to drop each time and create again. So if we run this, since we are going to create the database once and then we just continue querying, we just create it once and we use it, and then we just continue querying from then onwards using the select commands. So another thing now is we need to specify for it to use the staff DB. Remember the use, because if not, you want to create a table, it would try to create it in another database instead. So now the staff DB should be activated for you to use. So it drops and then it creates again. If you refresh it, it's there and it's ready to be used. So I'll just take some data from here, and then we are going to use it to create some tables. So let's just copy and paste here. I'm going to share the data with you so that you can be able to create the same tables. So now we are just saying create table, which you have already seen, called staff demographic, and in that table we have a staff ID with integer. As the staff ID is an integer like we've seen earlier. First name is a character, so we don't think names might be this long, up to 25 characters. So you can limit now to 15 so that you manage the space. Same as the last name, you can limit to 15 or 10 so that you manage the space. And then you have age as an integer. Gender, you limit that to maybe 6, so it can be male, female, or yeah. So let's just say we limit that to that. So now you're able to create a table which has all these columns, but then you don't yet have values in them. So let's go again and create a second table. So here is the second table. So I'll just give you the script, you run it, and you create the database yourself. So paste here, and here table 2 still has that. Then it's a job title is, let's say, about 15. So you just estimate that, okay, job title cannot be more than 15 characters long. So there is a staff ID as well here, so which means we should be able to join two tables subsequently. There is a job title, it's a text character, and then the salary is an integer. So we just want to keep it simple so that you get the basics, you understand how everything works, and then from then you can be able to do more complex things. So as a beginner, you need to just make sure you get the principles right. So here we are inserting now the values. So into the staff demographic here, table that we've created, we now start inserting values like we've seen earlier. So maybe 101 is this 101, so you need to follow the same order as we created. The first one was staff ID, we give it a 101. The second was first name, we give it the first name. Third is last name, we give it the last name. Fourth is age, we give it the age of 25, and then the fifth is gender, we give it male. So this is the first row of data. So this is the second row of data, this is the third row of data, fourth. So this is how you're going to have your rows of data. Now I'm going to put in now the other values. So I'll just copy the other values here for table 2 and add here, copy, and then I paste it here just to save time. Copy paste here. So we have now into the staff salary, which is the table 2 staff salary. Then we have now 101. So this the staff ID, 101, the job title, and then the salary. So if I run this, it says you have syntax, check that. So let's see integer. So let me see where the problem is coming from. So we are saying that this salary is an integer, and then we run this. So let me just copy because maybe here there are some issues here. So let me just copy the entire script, which I'll share with you, paste it there and run it so that we are sure that there are no typos here. So I'll just copy, and then I'll just do Control A and then I Control V. So let's run this now. So it goes well. So sure, there were some typos somewhere as I was copying and explaining, but then you have the understanding now of everything that is there. So if I go into staff DB and I go into tables, I have these two tables. So if I right click here and I go to select, I have all these names, and if I right click here and I click on this one, I have all these job titles. So I think that now you understand how to get this data in. You're just going to copy that script, get the same data, and then we are going to continue with the select statement from the next video on how to query this data. So hope you have been able to learn how to create databases, to drop databases, to create tables, insert values into tables, and you've understood some of the basic errors or warnings that you get as a beginner. And then we are going to continue next video with the select statement, which is really what the data analyst does, being able to query the data. And see you next video. Wish you good data luck.